I am not the favorite. I always knew that. My younger sister, with her perfect smile and charming demeanor, seemed to be the apple of everyone's eye, especially my father's. It was as if, with each of her achievements, a shadow was cast over me. The weight of that comparison was always unbearable. But I learned to live with it. For years, I watched as he praised her, as he supported her in every step she took. I was there, invisible, just a spectator in a show where I was never invited to perform. The smell of the coffee he made for us on Sunday mornings mingled with the silence I carried within me. He always said that family was everything, but it seemed that to him, my sister was the center of everything. But nothing prepared me for what would happen that fateful afternoon. It was an ordinary day, but the atmosphere was heavy, as if the air was laden with something I couldn't identify. When my father called me in to talk, my intuition screamed that something was wrong. I felt my heart race, and a lump formed in my throat. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher and said, "She can't stay here anymore. The weight of responsibility is too much for her." It felt like a punch to the stomach. His words echoed in my mind, and I wondered, what had I done to deserve this disdain? I didn't know that I was the first to be called to hear about what was happening. At that moment, I realized that the real burden wasn't the one my sister carried, but the expectation my father had of her. He never knew that I was there, ready to support, but simply couldn't meet the standard he had set. But there's something they didn't know. I was strong too, even though I had learned to hide under the weight of comparison. At that instant, something inside me awakened. The anger, the frustration, and the sadness mingled into one whirlwind of emotions. I wasn't invisible. I was just waiting for the right moment to reveal myself. Over time, the truth began to unfold. I was the one silently holding the family structure together. While everyone looked at my sister, I was there, supporting, helping, without receiving recognition. And it was in that moment that I realized that love shouldn't be a competition. I learned that what I felt wasn't just pain, but a form of love that manifested differently. God knows what's in everyone's heart. And perhaps the true lesson was this. The silence I carried transformed into a clear response. I didn't need to be the favorite to be loved. I learned that the weight we carry is often not ours, but something imposed on us. Sometimes, the worst pain isn't being sidelined. It's realizing that behind the comparisons, there was always the truth that strength comes from accepting who we truly are. Have you ever gone through something like this? It's worth reflecting on. The search for approval can be painful, but maybe it's time to stop and think. What really matters? If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. It was as if I were trapped in a bubble, watching life pass by while everyone around me had fun, oblivious to my struggle. With every compliment my sister received, I felt a piece of myself break. What I most wanted was for him to look at me and see my dedication, my silent struggle. But instead, I was just a shadow, a background figure in a picture that was never painted for me. On nights when everything seemed unbearable, I took refuge in my room, surrounded by books that transported me to worlds where I didn't need to compete. In those moments, I became the heroine of my own stories. But at dawn, reality pulled me back to the ground. The feeling of not being enough accompanied me like a dark cloud that wouldn't dissipate. The pressure I felt to be perfect, to be noticed, didn't come only from my father, but also from the church we attended. The religious community that surrounded us seemed to be a reflection of the dynamics at home. Evaluating eyes were always attentive, ready to judge. The quest for approval became a burden, and I found myself trying to fit into molds that never represented me. Family gatherings and worship services were moments when I felt even more isolated. While everyone raised their hands in worship, I wondered if I would ever have the courage to raise mine. What would happen if I spoke up? If I showed my pain? But the silence I kept was an armor. It was the only way I knew how to protect myself. In services, the music became a balm for my soul, but also a painful reminder of what was missing in my life. The joy that resonated in the songs did not match the sadness I carried. I wanted to scream, but the words got stuck in my throat, suffocated by the fear of displeasing. And then one day, something changed. A new person arrived at our church, a woman who seemed to understand the pain I carried. She spoke of unconditional love, of being accepted as we are, without masks. It was as if her words were an echo of what I needed to hear. What impacted me deeply was when she said, "God is not interested in who the favorite is. He loves each one of us in a unique way." At that moment, a small light lit up inside me. Could it be possible to be loved even without being the favorite? From that day on, I slowly began to open up. I started to share my experiences with the woman, and she became a mentor in my life. The meetings with her were like a breath of fresh air in the midst of an environment stifling. I talked about my sister, about my father, about the pain I carried. And, to my surprise, I was not judged. Instead, I found acceptance and understanding. This gave me the courage to face my fears. I started to participate more actively in church activities, not to seek approval, but to find a space where I could be myself. With each step, I began to deconstruct myself. I learned that I didn't need to compare myself with my sister or anyone else. I had my own light, and it deserved to shine. It was in this process that I realized true strength came from vulnerability. When I shared my testimony in a service, for the first time, I saw tears in the eyes of other people. They too were battling their own comparisons, their own insecurities. What I thought was a weakness turned into a bridge that connected me to others. The pain that once isolated me now became a form of empathy. I was not alone. The feeling of invisibility began to dissipate as I allowed myself to be seen. And in showing myself, I realized there was no need to be perfect. It was enough to be myself, with all my faults and insecurities. But even so, the path was not easy. The internal struggle still existed. The desire to be accepted and loved continued to haunt me. At times, I still felt lost, as if I were adrift in a sea of expectations. But, looking at my journey, I realized that every step I took towards authenticity was a victory. I had learned that true love was not a competition and that acceptance begins within. What really mattered was how I saw myself and how I chose to love myself, regardless of others' comparisons. And with that, I began to free myself from the chains that bound me. The true transformation did not happen overnight, but each small revelation brought me closer to the woman I wanted to be. And as painful as it was, I was willing to face the truth, to free myself from expectations, and to embrace my own story. And as this new version of myself emerged, I knew the journey. It was as if this new version of me was awakening from a long sleep. With each step towards authenticity, I felt the chains that bound me were unraveling, but there were days when the shadow of comparison still threatened to swallow me whole. My father's voice still echoed in my mind. The words he spoke so fondly about my sister, those phrases that had become like sharp knives, cutting into my self-esteem. It was a cycle I needed to break, a battle that was far from over. In the weeks that followed, I began to surround myself with people who saw me, who heard me, and who accepted me. The woman who became my mentor was not just a beacon. She was a living testimony of what it meant to be authentic. Her stories of pain and overcoming inspired me to keep going. I was not alone on this journey. By sharing my fears and insecurities, I realized that there were many other silenced voices around me. Often, the pain I felt seemed unique, but when I shared it, I discovered that others were also facing their battles, fighting against their own comparisons and insecurities. I was invited to a spiritual retreat at the church, an event that promised a new perspective on faith and acceptance. The idea of spending a weekend away from everything seemed daunting, but at the same time, I felt it was an opportunity to delve deeper into this new phase of my life. On the way to the retreat, nervousness accompanied me, but there was a hope that was beginning to blossom within me. Maybe, in that space, I could truly connect with who I was, without the weight of expectations. On the first day, upon entering the welcoming space, I was greeted with genuine smiles and warm hugs. The activities were simple but profound: circle conversations, guided meditations, and moments of reflection with each exercise. I left a bit of my armor behind. One of the most impactful activities was when we were asked to write a letter to ourselves expressing our deepest truths. At first, I hesitated. What would I say to myself? But as I put the pen to paper, words began to flow. I wrote about my insecurities, about the desire to be seen and loved, about the constant struggle to free myself from the comparisons that surrounded me. When I read the letter out loud, I felt tears streaming down my face. It was a release that I had never allowed myself before. The pain I carried transformed into relief, as if each written word was a stone I was throwing away. When I finished, I realized it was not just a letter, it was a manifesto of my resilience, a reminder that I was more than others' expectations. Throughout the retreat, I grew closer to other women who were also in search of self-knowledge. Some shared stories of pain similar to mine. Others spoke of their victories and achievements. This exchange was like a balm for my soul, a reminder that vulnerability could be a strength. I learned to listen attentively and compassionately. And with each story told, I felt my own pain lighten a little, but there was a moment that marked me deeply. One night, while we were gathered around the campfire, an older woman began to share her story. She spoke about her own struggles with comparison and how, for many years, she felt invisible. Her words echoed my own experiences, and with every sentence, I felt more connected to her. When she finished, a reverent silence hung in the air. Then, one of the participants began clapping, and soon we all joined in. What started as a venting moment transformed into a celebration of our stories, our struggles, and our victories. From that night on, I realized that pain was not a sign of weakness but an essential part of the journey. True love is not based on being the favorite, it is found in the mutual acceptance of who we are. I no longer needed to seek validation in my father's words or in comparisons with my sister. True validation came from within, from the courage to be who I am. When I returned home, something had changed within me. The family atmosphere was still the same, but I was no longer the same. I had learned to value myself and recognize my own light. From this place of acceptance, I began to communicate more openly with my father. I spoke about how his words affected me, how I felt invisible, and how constant comparison hurt me. To my surprise, he listened, although he did not have all the answers. He showed a willingness to understand and support my journey. With time, the relationship between us began to transform. He started to see not only my sister but also the strength of my journey. He began to understand that I too had stories, fears, and achievements. Conversations that were once superficial began to deepen sometimes. He was surprised to hear about the struggles I faced in silence. And I realized that he was not just the father I knew. There was a vulnerable man behind that strong figure, someone who also carried his own insecurities and fears. Little by little, the atmosphere at home began to change. My father started asking questions, taking an interest in my activities, my dreams, and my passions. He made an effort to see me not just as the older sister, but as a person with her own worth and potential. And as this new connection formed, I felt that the pain of comparison was dissipating. The shadow that had tormented me so much began to become just a distant memory. But this transformation was not limited to my relationship with my father. My sister also began to notice changes in me. She, who had always been the star, began to see the light that I was starting to shine. One sunny afternoon, as we talked about our days, she surprised me by saying that she admired my courage. Her words were like a balm to my soul. I had never imagined that she could see beyond the image of the invisible older sister. That conversation was a turning point, a moment when I realized that the comparison I so feared was being replaced by a feeling of mutual support. Still, the journey of self-discovery was not linear. There were days when I felt lost, like a leaf in the wind, searching for a place to land. The pressure to be perfect still existed, and the echo of society's expectations frequently resonated in my mind. However, the difference was that now I had tools and support. The conversations with my mentor continued to be a foundation, and the spiritual retreat had taught me to embrace vulnerability as a strength, not as a weakness. Once, when faced with a challenge at work, a project that seemed beyond my capabilities, I was overcome with a feeling of insecurity. The fear of failing paralyzed me, but instead of retreating into a cocoon, I decided to seek support. I called my mentor and, as I opened up about my insecurities, I realized I was doing something different. I wasn't seeking external validation but rather the courage to be authentic in the midst of fear. And, in that moment, I remembered that true strength doesn't lie in the absence of fear, but in the ability to face it. During a church meeting, I decided to share a new testimony. I would talk about the struggle against comparison, about how self-acceptance had helped me find a new path. As I stepped up to the pulpit, nervousness took over, but the memories of the tears I had shed while writing the letter to myself gave me courage. I was not there just to speak but to connect. And so, as the words flowed, I felt it was not just an outpouring. It was a celebration of my journey, a sharing of vulnerability that could resonate with others. The silence that followed my speech was broken by applause. Eyes met mine, and I saw empathy, understanding, Some people stood up and shared their own stories of comparison and struggle. It was as if, at that moment, all the shadows that had once separated us were dissipating, giving way to a collective light of acceptance. I was not alone, and that strengthened me. After that service, I realized that my journey was not just about me, but about all of us. Every story shared, every tear, every smile, were pieces of a bigger puzzle coming together before me. True community was not made up of perfect people, but of people who supported each other in their imperfections. Over time, I began to get more actively involved in church projects that promoted acceptance and inclusion. Participating in support groups, where we could share our struggles and victories, made me feel that I was contributing for something greater than myself. What once seemed like a burden now became a mission of love and acceptance. I wanted other people to know that they were not alone, that their stories were valid, and that their pain could transform into strength with each new experience. I felt like I was dismantling and rebuilding myself. The idea of being the favorite was becoming irrelevant, and my focus was on being the best version of myself. The search for external approval was gradually being replaced by the quest for internal acceptance. I was learning to love myself not for being perfect but for being genuine, but, like any story, mine also had its ups and downs. In a moment of fragility, I found myself again facing those comparisons that I was trying so hard to leave behind. It was a sunny afternoon, but inside me, the storm was already forming. A church meeting had turned into a space of discomfort. The conversations around me were filled with compliments towards my sister, and again, I saw myself as a shadow, an invisible figure amidst smiles and words of admiration. While everyone talked about their successes, about how my sister shone in everything she did, the feeling of inadequacy began to invade me, as if I were trapped in a bubble, unable to reach the fresh air of acceptance. I tried to breathe, tried to remember everything I had learned, but the pain of comparison was like a wound that never fully healed. I looked at my sister's face and saw the joy there. A part of me wanted to be happy for her, but another part felt suffocated by the pressure to be seen and recognized. That night, when I returned home, the weight of sadness settled in my chest. The questions returned: why am I not enough? What's wrong with me? I threw myself on the bed, and the tears began to slip across my face. The words of the woman who had become my mentor echoed in my mind, but at that moment, it felt like everything I had learned was distant, like a forgotten dream. It was then that I decided I could not let this shadow defeat me. I needed to confront these emotions, give voice to what was suffocating my heart. I grabbed a notebook and started to write. I wrote about the pain, about the comparison, about how I felt invisible, but I also wrote about the strength I was beginning to recognize within me. I became aware that the fight against comparison was not mine alone. It was a battle shared by many women around me. The next morning, an idea began to take shape. What if I could turn this pain into something positive? What if I could create a space where other people who felt like me could feel seen and heard? I began gathering courage, and I decided that I wanted to organize a meeting at the church, a support group where we could share our stories without fear of judgment, a place where vulnerability would be celebrated, not hidden. With my mentor's support, I began to structure the meeting. The idea was simple: to create a safe space where we could talk, vent, and support each other. As I spread the word, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. What if no one showed up? What if people didn't feel comfortable sharing? But, at the same time, there was a flame of hope burning inside me. I knew I needed to do this, not just for myself, but for all those who carried their own shadows. The day of the meeting arrived, and my heart was racing. The room was warmly decorated, with cushions and chairs arranged in a circle. As people started to arrive, my nervousness began to dissolve. Some knew my story, others were strangers, but all were there for a common reason: the search for acceptance and understanding. As stories began to be shared, the atmosphere transformed. Voices that were once silenced began to echo in the space. I heard accounts of insecurities, comparisons, internal struggles, and in each account, there was a piece of me. With each tear that fell, I felt that we were creating an invisible bond, mutual support that united us in vulnerability. The pain that once isolated me now became a thread that connected us. One woman in particular touched me deeply. She spoke about the pressure she felt to be perfect, about how she felt invisible in her own family. I saw her hands trembling as she told her story, and deep down, I knew that her fragility was a sign of strength. At the end of her speech, I received a hug from her, and at that moment, I realized that we were not just sharing stories, we were healing together. As the meeting progressed, something magical began to happen. People started to open up, support each other, and encourage one another. What began as a space of pain transformed into a space of acceptance. Laughter began to echo, and I realized that even amid suffering, there was still room for joy and hope. Love began to bloom there, and the sense of community became palpable. At the end of the meeting, I felt a wave of gratitude. That moment had taught me that true strength was not in avoiding pain, but in facing and sharing it. I was no longer just a spectator in my own life. I was taking the reins of my story and, more importantly, there were other people by my side, ready to walk together with. Over the weeks, the support group became a refuge. Each meeting was an opportunity to embrace vulnerability and celebrate the strength that emerged from our stories. A cycle of trust began to form, where each shared story was like a seed planted in fertile soil, ready to bloom. Voices that were once stifled now resonated with clarity, and the connection we established was palpable, like an invisible thread that united us in our quest for acceptance. The conversations deepened, and the experiences we shared were a reminder that although our stories were different, the pains and struggles we faced were similar. One woman, who became a close friend, spoke about the pressure she felt to be the perfect daughter in a traditional family. As she spoke, I saw tears in her eyes, and in her despair, I recognized the fragility of her strength. It was as if we were all connected by an invisible thread of empathy, and I realized that the pain that once isolated me had now transformed into a bridge that united us. Over time, the idea of creating a safe space for vulnerability began to grow in me. I wanted more people to know that they were not alone, that their stories were valid, and that their pains could be transformed into strength. Thus, I began to plan a larger event, a celebration of acceptance and authenticity. What I had in mind was a day of workshops, lectures, and activities that would promote self-acceptance and inclusion. As I organized everything, anxiety began to creep in. Would people actually come? Would the event have an impact? But, at the same time, there was a flame of hope burning inside me. I knew that I needed to do this, not just for myself, but for all those who still felt invisible. And when I shared this idea with the group, I realized I wasn't alone on this journey. Everyone was willing to contribute, to help, and to bring their own stories to the stage. The day of the event arrived, and as soon as I entered the space decorated with vibrant colors and messages of love and acceptance, my heart raced. People began to arrive, and a positive energy started to flow. What was once a small support group was now transforming into a vibrant community united by the search for authenticity. The activities began, and I saw familiar faces among the participants, but also new people who brought their own stories and experiences. During the lectures, I heard accounts of struggle and overcoming, and each word resonated in my heart. The energy in the air was palpable. It was as if we were bringing to life a dream that had started with a simple desire for connection. One of the speakers, a woman who had faced immense challenges, talked about how accepting her imperfections had become an act of courage. Her words penetrated me, as if each sentence was confirmation that we were all on the right path. I wasn't alone, and the strength that blossomed around us was a reflection of the love and acceptance we were cultivating. The practical activities were a moment of liberation. We created art murals, where each of us could express our journey in a creative way. The colors and shapes that emerged were like a visual representation of our struggles and achievements. I looked at the mural I had created and saw my insecurities but also my strength. What once seemed like an insurmountable mountain was now a collage of experiences that made me who I am. As the day progressed, I realized that the true transformation was happening not just within me, but in each of the participants. The stories we shared were not just venting. They were declarations of self-love, affirmations that we were enough, just as we were. What began as a space of pain was becoming a temple of celebration. That day, something changed inside me. The comparison that had once tormented me now seemed so distant. The light I had begun to recognize in myself was shining brightly. I didn't need to be the favorite, I didn't need to compete. True love wasn't a competition, it was a mutual acceptance of the imperfections that made us human. At the end of the event, as everyone gathered for a final reflection in a circle, I felt a wave of gratitude. What had started as a personal struggle was now transforming into a collective mission. The pain that had once isolated me was becoming a force that united us. The love and acceptance we had cultivated were like fuel propelling us forward. And as I looked at the faces around me, I realized that each of us had a unique story, but together, we were creating a narrative of strength and resilience. I was no longer a shadow, I was a vital part of this community, a voice joining many others in search of acceptance. And that journey of self-discovery was just beginning. What I had experienced up to that moment was a preparation for what was yet to come. The light that was finally starting to shine within me was not just a reflection of my personal achievements but a sign that vulnerability and acceptance were powerful tools for transformation. In the following days, the conversations that arose during the event echoed in my mind. I started to realize that the struggle against comparison was not a battle I faced alone. The pain that once felt like a heavy burden now became a link that connected me to so many other women. It was a reminder that vulnerability, when shared, transforms into collective strength. This connection propelled me to want to do more, to seek ways to create a space where everyone felt valued and seen. With this burning desire inside me, I began to plan a series of monthly meetings where we could continue to share, learn, and grow together. The goal was to create an environment where authenticity was celebrated and comparison left aside. I wanted every woman who walked through the door to feel that she was enough, exactly as she was. It was a mission that filled me with hope and determination. As I organized the meetings, I realized there was an important aspect I still needed to address: my relationship with faith. The church had always been a central part of my life, but for a long time, I had felt torn between the love for my community and the pain its expectations caused me. I knew that many in the congregation struggled with the same comparisons, and this led me to reflect on how we could integrate this theme into our gatherings. I decided it would be important to invite some of the women from the church to talk about their own experiences with faith and comparison. The idea was to create a space where we could explore how spirituality and self-acceptance interlinked. I started to think of a discussion panel where we could share stories of how our faith sustained us in moments of doubt and insecurity. I believe spirituality can be a powerful pillar, but often, the way it is presented can contribute to the pain we feel. When I reached this conclusion, I realized there was still a challenge to be faced. How could I do this in a way that wouldn't be seen as a critique of the church, but rather as an invitation for an open dialogue? I wanted it to be a space where everyone could feel comfortable sharing their struggles without fear of judgment. After many days of reflection, I decided that the best approach would be to be transparent about my own journey, showing how the search for acceptance and understanding had led me to a new perspective on faith. At the next meeting, I shared this idea with the group. To my surprise, everyone was excited about the possibility of exploring these themes. The energy in the room was contagious, and I knew we were about to create something truly special. Women began volunteering to help organize the panel, bringing their own stories and experiences to the table. Empathy was flourishing, and the sense of community was growing stronger and stronger. As we prepared for the panel, my anxiety was replaced by a feeling of anticipation. I knew we were about to open an important dialogue that could impact not just us, but many other women in our community. The day of the event arrived, and the room was filled with familiar and new faces. The atmosphere was one of warmth and curiosity. The stories shared on that panel were profound and moving. Each woman brought a unique perspective on how faith and comparison had shaped their lives. Hearing those experiences made me realize that the pain I carried was not mine alone. It was a collective pain, and together, we were creating space for healing. One woman spoke about how she felt pressured to be perfect in her faith, while another shared how comparison distanced from her own spirituality. It was a powerful testimony that vulnerability, when shared, transforms into strength. At the end of the panel, a reverent silence filled the room. People were reflecting on what they had heard, and I felt that we were about to begin a new phase in our community. A phase where acceptance and vulnerability would be the pillars of everything we would build. Together, as I opened the space for questions, I noticed that many were eager to share their own stories. The exchange of experiences was like a chain of support, where each voice added to the other, creating a healthy and inspiring dialogue. Over time, those meetings became a point of reference for many women in our community. What was once a space of pain had now transformed into a haven of love and acceptance. The stories we shared were not just about comparisons and insecurities. They were about growth, resilience, and the beauty of being imperfect. Each month, more women joined us, bringing their experiences and allowing themselves to be seen. As the group expanded, I began to realize that the transformation I sought in myself was also being as the group expanded. I began to realize that the transformation I sought in myself was also being reflected in the other women who joined us. What were once timid and insecure conversations were now turning into deep and courageous dialogues. Each meeting was a new opportunity to explore not only the comparisons that hurt us but also the experiences of love and support that we were beginning to cultivate with each other. One afternoon, a new member joined the group. Her name was Anna, and she seemed burdened with deep sadness. When she started to speak, the words came out with difficulty, as if each syllable was stuck in her throat. She talked about the pressure she felt to be perfect in her professional life and how it affected her mental health. Listening to her story, I could see the reflection of so many other women who had gone through the same thing. It was as if each of us was sharing a piece of a puzzle that fit perfectly, revealing the complexity of our lives. Anna spoke about how she constantly felt compared to colleagues who seemed to have everything under control. Her insecurities were palpable, and the pain in her voice resonated with me. At that moment, I realized that our group's mission went beyond simply sharing stories. It was a sacred space where we could embrace the pain and, at the same time, find strength. As soon as Anna finished, a respectful silence filled the room. Then, a woman in the group, who had faced similar challenges, spoke up. She shared her own story of struggle and overcoming, offering Anna a glimpse of hope. This kind of exchange became common in our meetings. Each of us brought our experiences, and through vulnerability, we created a space where love and acceptance flourished. What was once an individual burden now became a collective path to healing. I realized that by sharing our struggles, we were freeing ourselves from the chains of comparison and judgment. With each story, the weight we carried seemed to get a little lighter. One night, at the end of a meeting, a group of women decided it was time to take a step forward. We talked about the possibility of creating a community project that could impact even more lives. The idea was to organize an event open to the public, where we could share our stories and invite other women to join us. The enthusiasm was palpable. I felt that we were about to do something big, something that could change lives. With everyone's help, we began to plan the event. What I imagined as a simple meeting turned into a day of celebration. Ideas started to flow: lectures, workshops, moments of reflection, and, of course, a space where everyone could share their stories. With each planning meeting, the energy grew, and I saw a sparkle in the eyes of every woman who joined us. It was as if we were all awakening to a new reality, where acceptance and love were the protagonists. As the event approached, my nervousness also grew. I knew we were about to open a space that could be transformative, but I also feared what might happen. What if people didn't attend? What if there was no interest? But at the same time, a certainty began to sprout within me. We weren't just a group of women, we were a community united around a greater cause. On the day of the event, the space was filled with familiar and new faces. The energy was contagious. As soon as we began, I realized that vulnerability was at the core of everything. The stories shared were profound and moving, and I felt that we were building an invisible bond that united us. One woman spoke about how comparison had distanced her from her true essence, while another shared how acceptance helped her reconnect with her faith. It was a powerful testimony that pain, when shared, transforms into strength. At the end of the event, we held a reflection circle. Everyone had the opportunity to talk about what they had felt during the day. I heard words of gratitude, love, and hope. One woman, with tears in her eyes, said she had never felt so welcomed and accepted before. That expression of vulnerability deeply touched me. The pain that had isolated us was now transforming into a thread that connected us. And I realized that we were at the forefront of something grand. The impact of that event was beyond what I could have imagined. Women began to meet outside the monthly gatherings, forming bonds of friendship and support. The project grew, and other women in the community started showing interest in participating. What began as a small seed of hope had transformed into a vibrant garden of acceptance and love. As I reflected on all of this, I realized that the journey of self-discovery would never end. every step I took towards authenticity still led me to new discoveries about myself and others. The quest for authenticity became a shared journey, and I felt that each woman who joined us was a reflection of the parts I was still learning too. Except, it was as if, together, we were drawing a new map where comparison and competition no longer had a place. With each meeting, new voices rose. And I realized that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but a powerful strength that connected us. A woman named Laura shared a story that deeply moved me. She spoke about how she had lost herself amidst family and social expectations, and how she finally found the courage to step away from all of that and seek her own truth. Hearing her journey was like seeing a mirror reflecting parts of myself that I hadn't yet recognized. By the end of her talk, the room was silent, and when she finished, everyone applauded enthusiastically. The support she received was a testament to what we had built together. Over time, the group began to expand even more. Women of different ages and backgrounds started to join us, bringing a diversity of experiences that only enriched our discussions. When a young girl named Sophia, who was dealing with the pressure of being perfect at school, highlighted how comparison prevented her from enjoying her achievements. Our meetings became a space where we could discuss not only comparison but also themes like self-esteem, mental health, and faith. It is incredible how pain, when shared, can turn into a catalyst for transformation. At one of the meetings, we decided to do a special activity. Each of us was to bring an object that symbolized her journey. When it was my turn, I held up a mirror. I had chosen it because, for a long time, I avoided looking at what was reflected in it. The mirror represented not only the insecurities I carried but also the acceptance I was beginning to cultivate. By sharing this, I realized that so many others were also letting go of what no longer served them. The act of bringing a personal symbol became a moment of release and connection. These meetings were not just about sharing stories. They were about creating a space of genuine acceptance, where each of us could feel seen and heard. Vulnerability became a path to healing, and I felt that we were all in a process of continuous transformation. However, even with all these advances, there were days when the shadows of comparison still threatened to envelop me. Sometimes, I found myself reflecting on how the journey of self-discovery was not linear. I had days when I felt strong and empowered, and others when insecurities would come back to haunt me. These struggles were part of the process, and I was learning to accept them as a natural aspect of life. The true strength came from recognizing that we were all imperfect and that this, in fact, was what made us human. And so, as we continued to meet, the light that began to shine within me became a beacon for others. The journey was just beginning, and I knew there was much more to come. Before you leave, do 2 things now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive upcoming messages. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. To continue, watch the next video. It is already in the cards and also in the description.